So I'm about to embark on a restoration of a disbound book, but before sort of creating that project, I wanted to do a short video just to have a general discussion about whether books are worth restoring, kind of the pros and cons of restoring, and you know, because a lot of the times there are some pretty good arguments for actually not restoring a book. But also some good ones for doing so. So I thought I'd probably start with a couple of examples from the really old end of the collection. So I guess to sort of set one extreme, that would be books which are in a completely disbound state, and which are just ancient, bluntly. You know, they're more than 500 years old. They're what we call incunabular or post-incunabular. You know, not long after the dawn of the printing press. Would you even dare to restore something like this? And I only have one example that really falls into that category. This book was printed in 1510, and it's actually complete, but it probably hasn't had, I mean, as you can see, the worms have gotten at it for the rear pages there. And this probably hasn't had covers in, you know, potentially hundreds of years. Something like this, to be honest, honestly, its condition is almost part of its story. And I would argue against restoring this. It would be impossible to really authentically recreate how it looked. And frankly, it just looks cool in a presentation box just as it is. So, you know, I sort of take the view that you view that in effect as a museum piece, and you just enjoy it in the condition it's in. This is the other end of the scale. So this book looks very boring. If there's ever a case of do not judge a book by its cover, this is a good example of it. This book was actually published in 1553. This is a very old, important book, but as you can probably see, this has had, you know, a long journey of restoration throughout its life. It has gold on the top, which was a very common thing to do around the year, you know, between the 1850s and 1950s, I guess. You'd often see this sort of gilding, practice gilded on all corners. That certainly wasn't done in the 1500s. These covers were probably recycled of another book, and that book probably met its end in some kind of fire. You can see this was singed with a candle here, and then you have a really sort of 20th century sort of cloth spine here with a sticker on. So this book did not look like this in 1553. So if this ever got sort of, the covers got damaged, the covers fell off, the spine split, would you restore this? You may as well. You know, because it certainly was not authentically restored previously. So, you know, in that case, you may as well go ahead. Restoration obviously has a cost. It has a time commitment if you do it yourself. And most of the time, unfortunately, because books are very undervalued as objects today, most of the time it just simply isn't worth restoring them for monetary value. So it's really a case of, you know, are they things that you're attached to emotionally? Are they old friends that you want to keep, that have family history and so on? And those are the reasons why you might consider restoration. And sometimes these things only become clear when you physically take possession of books. I'd seen this collection on eBay. This is a complete set of 1818 Gibbon Decline and Fall. And I'd seen this set for really not much money and purchased it. And from what I could tell looking at the pictures, it looked to be in a truly atrocious state. And I was thinking, you know what? I'm going to use my leather bindings to restore these. It'll be a great project. They'll look amazing. They'll have some good value and so on. However, when I took possession of them and started looking at them closely, I started to realize that these are actually the original printer's covers for these books. So if you were to buy a set of books in the 19th century, the printer would provide some very temporary covers for the books using very low-grade materials. So in this case, you can probably see it's, you know, a low-grade cloth or paper, compacted newspaper that's been used in the binding, and just some temporary labels with the price on. And the idea was you'd buy this and you go down to your local bindery and probably spend the same amount of money again to have them beautifully bound in leather. So it was a two-step process to purchase a fine set of books. So to actually have a set of the original printer's covers, which were very fragile, survive this long, and in actual fact the prices on these labels of £4, 20 shillings I think it is, no, £4, 16 shillings, the original purchase price of this set. So that sort of brings to mind, well, okay, now there's a historical element to this, there's a story, there's a value in this binding, shabby though it is, fragile though it is. And so I decided, you know what, I don't think I will restore them. I think they actually look better in their sort of shabby chic as they are, because it's probably extremely rare now to actually find these books surviving in a complete state with the original printer's binding. So very often for historical reasons, it's just better not to restore them. So that brings us to this little guy here. So I recently obtained this. It's a 1586 volume. It has, you know, in common with many, you know, late Renaissance books, it's numbered by the folio. So there's only one number on the recto here. So there's actually twice the number of pages that you see here as numbers. And so I was thinking about, okay, is this a restoration project for me? Do I want to attempt this? There would be, you know, a good justification for saying, you know what, this is the same as this guy. It should be in a plastic box and just admire it for what it is. In this particular case, though, I discovered just in the last few days that there's actually a folio missing. So if you're at the point where the pages are actually starting to really come loose like this is, that's a red warning sign that, you know, you're in an emergency situation at this point, and you have to take action to do some kind of restoration, because, you know, in effect the book's dying at this point. So I'm going to attempt to restore this, and I'll create a playlist of videos as we go through this restoration journey. It's going to be very complex. There are some elements of this that don't really exist anymore. For example, this is a great example of a book that has structural headbands and tailbands. These are really critical to the structure of the book. They're the only thing that give the text blob rigidity, because these ties here in the middle are vellum and leather, whereas these are wood, actually, some kind of stick. So there's going to be some complexity about trying to reinforce these, because they're already starting to fall apart. We'll have to decide what we do with these, and then decide on appropriate boards and so on to put these in. So that's going to be an interesting journey that we'll follow. But there we go. It's a complex decision, and my piece of advice would be, think about it, take some time, think about it again, think about it again, and only make your decision, you know, having considered everything in the round, because restoration's a big commitment, and at the end of the day you have to follow the Hippocratic Oath of books just as you would with human patients.